Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Bosch Legacy Season 1, Episode 9. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's start off with the Bosch and Whitney Vance situation of it all. I thought was really interesting that the assassin, she's the hired gun, she ended up breaking into Bosch's place, and then he ends up walking by her because she's pretending like she's cleaning the place, cleaning a window, like she's just servicing the building, and as he goes into his room, and goes into his office, he smells something. Now I was wondering, was it because she was wearing something very distinct? Because he's like, the only person that really comes in here is me, and he's got years of experience as a cop, so he knows like something's off, something feels weird, and I don't know whether that's because maybe she'd already kept up the pretense of like, oh, I'm cleaning this place, so maybe she already smelled like chemicals. So when she went into Harry's office, it's like she ended up leaving some of that behind, because whatever it was distinct enough for him to go, what was that? And he sees her leave outside his window. He goes outside. She left all his stuff. He knew something was up. So at this point, he's like, right, they've taken the bait. So he's like, right, might as well just get rid of this bug. I was almost wondering if when Harry looked, he wasn't going to find it because they got rid of it because they didn't need it anymore, but he no longer needs it. To the point, she decided to burn down the DNA lab that they supposedly were dropping that off to, which I'm like, the fact is, who knows that feels like that's a horrible situation. We don't know what other DNA might be sitting there. Hopefully it's nothing crime related, because that would, I feel like, because those aren't in-house like crime labs where they send DNA for. Those aren't in-house. Do they outsource those to like businesses and stuff like? I think those are in-house. I think that's probably is something like more so about like familial type of stuff. Maybe that's what that is. I mean, that still sucks because that's so much DNA that's probably lost of like, oh yeah, maybe people, there's a ripple effect to that. Hopefully it's not on a criminal level, because that would suck major ass, but hopefully that, I mean, the lesser of the two evils would be like, okay, it's just on a personal level DNA stuff, but whatever the case may be, the fact is they're willing to go that far is wild. So Harry ends up meeting up with Ida. Ida finds out, the truth about everything, which we later on find out, oh, she knew the entire time. But she's like, oh, I didn't know about the contents of it. Plus, I'm going to get 10 mil. Oh, wow. It's like, Harry's like, you might want to get your own lawyer. I know one was like, okay, you're going to get honey to, and then like the two detectives, which I was almost like, because that detective shows up again. He's like, oh, what happened to your other partner? Oh, dropped dead of an aneurysm. I'm like, what? I was like, okay. That's interesting. So I love the whole back and forth pro quo situation that they gone on. It's like, all right, you asked me a question? No. I even love that one point the guy that asked another question. Harry's like, don't get greedy. But yes, this is what it is, and kind of answers his questions. But they are looking at, because apparently the reason why the medical examiner, coroner, looked into, because they were trying to make him like spice things up. Whoever was initially looking into Whitney Vance's death, the way they were making it sound, they had done it out of like, oh my god, like the reputation, like the celebrity of like, oh my god, like by leaving it undetermined or something like that. Like that's why they went kind of above and beyond, even though it might have seemed like natural causes at first. They do find saliva on like a pillow or something, so it's like, okay, the guy was smothered. So it's like, all right, so who are some of the suspects? Sloane, I'm like, but yeah, it's like Harry kind of makes it seem like Sloane might be on their side, so probably not. And then they start running off a list of people, and then it's Ida, and it's like, Ida, the secretary, I was like, uh-oh. And then they bring up the pen situation, and I felt so stupid in that moment. I was like, of course, I felt so stupid. They made a point episodes ago to show that she forges stuff for him, that she knows how to sign stuff on because she can forge his signature. I was like, oh my god, I felt stupid. It never correlated in my head. It never crossed my mind to think. I mean, for when we end up finding out later on that whole letter is bogus. Not fully. Some of it is bogus, but she's written his will. Because Harry brings it up later on, she writes stuff for him, so she's also good at forging his signature. I was like, oh my god. I was like, man, I didn't even realize that. Oh, I felt so stupid because I'm like, right, they made a point to show that she signed stuff for him. And now you get little context for so much stuff when it comes down to it. But Harry was kind of suspicious of her, so he has the cops show up. He even has Honey come over to kind of trap Ida. It isn't just about the money for her. Now there was a line that Ida said. She's like, "You 40 years and you didn't even realize," or something. I had said it a couple episodes ago. I thought like, oh, like, I interpret that as like, oh, did you have feelings for him and he was never aware of it? But it turns out she modified the will. He was near death's door. He did tell her to write up the will and everything. So most, like 90% of that's legitimate, except for the part where she got 10 mil because he forgot about her, which sucked because, once again, the line of, she's been working for him for 40 years. You relied on me. I was always there for you. So it kind of sucks that I wasn't even a thought. I wasn't even getting any. You relied on me. You know, you relied on me every day, and I was nothing but like served you wholeheartedly and honestly for 40 years, and you didn't even give me anything. So she amended the will to include that, just a little bit, and a drop in the hat compared to everything that his estate and everything is worth. And it's like 10 million. That's nothing. You know, she thought like, I make it fair is fair, but Whitney was getting better, and he wanted to pull the will back after she'd already sent it out, just because it's like, right, I guess he didn't want to take the chance that someone would get a hold, you know, like, right, while I'm still alive and everything. And Ida ended up killing him because something in her snapped, because she couldn't take the chance, because if he found out the truth, he'd see what she had done, and she couldn't live with that. So something inside of her snapped and killed him. So it's kind of a tragedy that things kind of played out this way. There was some maliciousness involved, but it wasn't like what I would have initially thought it to be in there. I mean, greed ends up being kind of the core of it all, but it's like, because she just felt, no, this is what I was owed. He didn't look out for me. You know, maybe if she, I mean, it still would have been a thing of she would have gotten fired, because I think most of her life revolved around Whitney Vance. So if he would have found out what she did, and the bond between them would have been broken, and it's just like, right, I squeezed in a little something extra for me, which, you know, the greed got the best of her, but she kind of felt, you know, I mean, she felt old, you know, so it's just kind of sad that it played out this way. But it also goes back to a point when they made it, like, was it last episode, where it's like, oh, Sloan might actually be a good guy. I was like, wait, did they do the switcheroo where Sloan is actually the good guy and Ida's the bad person? Turns out that's totally the case. I was like, man. And I love, once again, the way they write Honey Chandler in this series. I'd have to go back, because I don't think she ever talked like this, but she was like, man, why did they almost look pissed at us that we fucking cleared their case for them, ungrateful bastards. I was like, she has a lot of bite to her, like, dialogue. I feel like that wasn't, like, don't get it twisted, like, as Mimi Rogers always, like, had bite to that character, even in the original series, but it feels like they added a little, like, touch of, like, because I swear she didn't swear as much in the original series, because I feel like I would have noticed that or something. So, like, because it stands out more, not in a bad way. I was just like, I think it's kind of like she's very, you know, like, got that extra oomph after everything that she's been through. I think it's kind of like, it's almost like I don't give a fuck after, like, nearly dying like that, kind of gives you perspective, you know. So I think it's just kind of like a little shift in her personality, showing, like, how a little bit of, I don't know, once again, maybe, like, someone could correct me in the comments down below if I'm wrong, but I feel like her dialogue was never written like that before. Once again, not an issue, I just think it's such an interesting thing, like, it's just so noticeable to me, but, you know, maybe that's just me not remembering her dialogue as well as, like, I think I do. Like, I just feel like she wasn't written that way with that. Once again, she always had the bite, but never that, like, that added a little spice to her dialogue is what I'm saying. So I thought that was interesting. But Harry's like, yeah, the fact is, it doesn't look good that the fact is the suspect turned herself in before they even found out she was a suspect, because Harry was like, yo, show up to Ida's police. Harry didn't say anything about Ida being a suspect, so they went into this being like, what the hell is Harry calling us for? Cool. So, yeah. But I think confessing ahead of time eases things up a little bit, but Ida also turns herself in because of, like, right, I need to pay for what I've done. She feels guilty about it, so there's that. Speaking of Chandler, she does talk to her therapist about a dream she had. It was that whole thing of, like, oh yeah, I'm in court and I'm naked, which obviously is an anxiety dream. But then she's like, yeah, I woke up. But it was that dream within a dream thing where she woke up and she was still in a dream, and she had that sinking feeling of, like, oh my god, I committed a crime. I killed someone. But then she woke up sweating from that. So, which I've heard other people talk about those dreams. I've gotten those dreams before. They are like the fucking worst. When you wake up like, oh my god, I did this terrible thing, and you're like, no, I didn't. Like, why the fuck? Like, you know, I've had that exact one where she was like, oh, I've done something. Like, I've done something where it's like, oh, car related. I don't drive, and that just adds more anxiety to me not wanting to drive. Like, fucking, I don't like cars. I kind of don't like being vehicles in general. It just makes me uneasy. It's stupid, but I super don't like being behind the wheel. So it kind of plays into that. So like that, it plays into that nightmare a little bit. I'm like, oh, I can kind of understand it, because I've not just that a car one specifically, but I've had those feelings in general where like I've done something terrible, and it's like, wait, did I? Because she's even going as far as like, was it a repressed memory? Did I actually like? Because she couldn't see who it was, because even her therapist was like, oh, was it Carl Rogers? She's like, I didn't see their face. So I was like, if it was Carl Rogers, it would make sense. But she's like, I didn't see their face. I ran them over. It was a hit and run. And I just kind of moved on. And she's like, did I do it subconsciously and bury it? And then she goes to her car to even check it, but there's no damage to suggest a hit and run. But that also leaves up the thing of like, well, could it be like a super repressed memory from even further back? But her therapist says that it's a nightmare. What it means is guilt. It's like, what could you feel guilty about? And I guess it's like the Carl Rogers of it. He was a garbage person. He had 4 people killed. Almost had sent someone to almost kill her. Was sent, and that same assassin also went after Maddie. But there's something of like, I think the part of her that's all about justice, I think for her to be like, right, I could have prevented that. Like, so maybe there's guilt about that, or maybe we're going to find out there's something even deeper with Chandler that we haven't scratched the surface on yet. I'd assume the Carl Rogers thing, because it hasn't, you know, because you could tell it's still like sat with her, because I think maybe it also feel the guilt of maybe she wasn't the one that got to kill him, because she'd been thinking about it for a while. She'd been practicing with a gun. She kept one on herself. Like, she probably wanted to be the one to pop him, but she couldn't. So maybe the guilt isn't about him, like, oh, I should have done something. It's like in the regard of like, oh, I should have gotten help to him beforehand. Or is it more so like, I feel guilty about not being the one to kill him? So that's definitely going to be interesting to find out where things kind of go on that front. We have a further into the whole Dr. Pursue a murder case that Mo was able to get like hacked into like the medical stuff, and found out that Basu was noticing, like, he was going to confront a doctor about their high level like prescriptions and stuff like that. And Harry asked a guy like, oh, he prescribed you Oxy, right? And the guy was like, nah. Like, I wish the guy did, but it's like, yeah, I haven't gotten anything, because Basu was his main doctor, but this other doctor hadn't prescribed him anything. And it turns out it's the exact doctor I knew. I was like, the moment, like, they were like, I felt like immediately, like, they made, once again, it's that you watch enough crime dramas, you're like, oh yeah, it's most likely the person you come across at least once in the investigation. And home dude made a face when Harry was like, when he was done talking to Harry, like, the camera stayed on him a little long, he had this look like, damn it, you're looking too deep into this. He's like, he thought everything was good when Jeffrey took the fall. Once again, I feel like the detective who's involved in the investigation, my thought was like, he must be getting a slice of the pie, like why he's going so hard in the paint after Jeffrey, even though he hasn't really looked at any other viable suspects. So we haven't really tackled that yet, but I think that might be an element we might be dealing with soon enough. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where things kind of go on that front. But Mo did get a picture of that doctor, like, handing someone some, so it's like, right, it's definitely him then. So he's the one that killed Basu. Especially the moment they introduced the fact is that it's also whoever it was most likely had medical or military medical training, because just a very specific, precise is the word I'm looking for, nature of like the wounds. So I was like, yeah, it's got to be that guy. So, because he's a medical expert that they someone with a medical background that we've got introduced to in the story. Because usually the killer is going to be someone that you've met. Unless it's an assassin type of thing or a hired gun, like, it's usually going to be someone that you might have met or it's kind of been in the background to some extent. So, another element to the episode is Maddie and Vasquez get drawn into the whole situation of looking into the luchador mask guy. And so, looking through some trash, they end up, well, because they're knocking around asking people, did they notice anything? And ultimately, looking through the trash, they end up finding a luchador mask, which DNA isn't the end all be all, as Harry says, and he talks to Maddie because she's like, what's going to happen next? It's like, well, he says you start trying to connect the cases, like what connects the victims. Like the fact is, it seems like the perpetrator does the same thing, cuts their screens and stuff, but like how is he choosing his victims? Is there like something that connects them and stuff, which Maddie doesn't know? And he's like, that's probably like the detective who's investigating is Coleman. They're most likely connecting those dots. So DNA is one thing, but it's like, right, whoever the suspect is most likely isn't CODIS. So they probably have never been caught before. The guy that reaches out to Maddie later on, you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely the moment. Like he calls her and we get a look at him, and you're like, it's this guy, isn't it? And then you get super confirmed with the fact is he's looking into Maddie. It's like, yeah, because Maddie's been causing too much of a buzz, and the fact is that she reached out to him made him a little nervous. That it's like, right, a cop contacted me personally about this. I don't know if he knows that Maddie's been neck deep into the investigation, so or not. But he also looks into her, and obviously I think there's pictures of her and her dad, maybe. But, he's like looking into her, so you're like, that's not good. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front. There's also the continuation into the Nicole Davis situation, because Morrison actually goes and visits Nicole, mom, and wants to say, like, I'm sorry that things played out the way, but she's like, you promised that you would look after my baby girl, and you didn't. You didn't keep your promise. I thought, at first I was like, you could tell Morris had like a guilty conscience about it, especially what he discovered previously. So what I was thinking is that I thought he was going to go to Chandler, or at the very least give the evidence to Miss Davis and be like, don't tell him when you got this from me. I thought that's where that was going to go, but it didn't. But he had to, because he felt guilty about it. He did give her his promise. And then ultimately Bennett comes to him about this, and it's like, right, tell me about Cosgrove. And so it's like, right, because Cosgrove refers to him as suspect 1 and 2. So he didn't look at Nicole as, a potential victim in all this. But Morrison's like, no, I specifically told him that she was potentially a victim, that she was being coerced. And Bennett's like, right, you got that from the mother, right? She could have been lying to. She's like, so why didn't you include all this in your report? He's like, I did as best as I could. He's like, in a situation like this, everyone's closing rank. Everyone's trying to protect themselves. So he's like, I couldn't lean into it all the way. I think because of the blue veil thing, because I think it probably would have still fell back on him. But it's like, right, he did tell Cosgrove. And because, once again, Cosgrove did not include that when he was rallying up the group and the team. Like, we never saw that on-screen conversation. So he was probably like, Morrison's like, he probably didn't really pay too much attention about Morrison. It's like, yeah, this guy is, Nicole, she's just as guilty as him. She's an accomplice to all of this. But, once again, Morrison heard that the gun was in the trunk, so I guess all that got put to Bennett. He's like, right, we're all trying to, he's like, right, you're just trying to get your report in order. She's like, no, I'm trying to stay as objective as possible. And for him, it's almost just kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever. Everyone's looking out for themselves in this situation, so it's going to be interesting. But Morrison I think he handed over everything, being like, yo, this does say that the gun was in the car, which Chandler is looking into this whole thing with Cosgrove, because it turns out that he's always someone that gets close to the line but never crossing it. It seems like it, because she ended up talking to someone else that had, sued him or something like that, but it didn't. I don't remember the circumstances of the person Chandler was talking to, so. But it was there was no smoking gun against Cosgrove. This might be one. The whole thing of the gun was actually in the trunk, and we know that someone else had been like, yo, sir, and they looked in the trunk, and we never got to see it. But now having the context from Morrison's listening to Nicole and Sharp's conversation about the gun. Well, she had told her mom that he had a gun, but it was in the trunk. She saw him put it in the trunk, so. Well, I'm sure that's going to be coming up next episode. So there's all of that. And then finally, we had Sloan going to Philip and trying to get some info out of Philip. But Philip was very careful, and nothing that was that could be seen as confessional in certain regards. So it's like, right, nothing. He was very careful about his words, and Sloane's like, right, I'm gonna go back, and I'm like, good guy, Sloane. And then you see that the hired gun, she's spotting them together. So I'm assuming they weren't following Sloane. They probably like thought he was 100% on their side. She was probably keeping an eye on Bosch, and then like ended up catching them together. So now Creighton knows that they're working together. It's like, right, we got a traitor in our midst, and then so she's going to take care of all of this. The hired gun shows up at Viviana. It's like, yeah, something's weird. Mr. Sloane called. I guess he had texted her or something like that. It's like he wants to. Either she forced him to say that, or because she said, I don't know. She never specified whether it was like a call or text. And it's like Viviana's like, that doesn't make any sense. He already did a check. Plus, I gave him a key, so why should I need to buzz him up? And Bosch knew. All right, get your son, get out of there. So either like she forced him to buzz her up. It's like, oh, buzz me up. And I think Sloane's dead, because the moment Harry tries to call him, it goes straight to his voicemail. I'm like, damn, that sucks. Sloane was trying to do the right thing. Once again, just the greed of the situation, Crichton and Philip going above and beyond the way they have. And that kind of sucks. That in the end, like, Ida doing what she did, but Sloane trying to do the right thing, look after Viviana and her son like the right way. So I guess that's why he deleted the message, because he didn't know, he didn't want to take the chance anyone would have listened to it. So once again, I love that twist of like, no, Sloane's actually the good guy in this regard. Might have died trying to do the right thing too. I get the feeling like the fact is he didn't pick up his phone, he's dead. So like I said, either she killed him, took the phone, texted Viviana that, or made him go up to like the buzzer and was like, Viviana, I don't think he would have let that happen. So I think she probably killed him and took his phone and texted Viviana. Like I said, he never specified like how that came to be. But either way, Harry's rushing to get there. Just as the hired gun, she's closing in. So, and that's where the episode ends. So, quite the interesting cliffhanger to end things on. I think that's going to be immediately resolved in like the first couple minutes of the episode. Hopefully, I believe Harry's going to get there in time. I think everything's going to get resolved on that front. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see the end result of all this, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the next episode is the season finale. So it's going to be interesting to ultimately see how they end up wrapping up the season. I'm excited to see how everything plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.